evening. I'd like to call to order the April 17th, 2015 Planning Board meeting. I guess I'd like to start off our meeting by, I should have remembered the exact years of service, but Brian Curry had been with us for almost as long as I've been involved with anything in the town. He was the face of the planning board for a long, long time.
28 years.
20 years?
28.
28? Wow. Jesus, I remember that. And I'd also like to really welcome Tom Bott, our new town planner.
Thank you.
And he's from, lives in Plymouth, but worked in Kingston, right?
That's correct.
And has joined us, and I've been working with him for a few weeks now. We got to know each other real well, and he's been real active, and I hope you all enjoy working with him. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, first thing on our agenda is the minutes from March 27th.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of the minutes of March 27, 2018, in the Planning Board.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The next is a public comment. These are for things that are not on our agenda tonight, so if anyone has anything to say, this is the time to do it. Okay? You go out and be part of the public.
Yep, I'm John Q. Public.
Objection.
This is, my comments are not
Identify
direct.
yourself, please.
Let me get started, sir. I'm Robert Leary, Precinct 8. I'm not speaking as a board member. I'm speaking as a member of the public, and my comments aren't directed at this board. It centers more on something that happened during town meeting. There was a discussion about whether votes should be counted and the people identified through their votes, and it generated some discussion about anonymity and people being protected from negative comments and social media posts and all this other stuff. And it's come to my attention that a member of our own board has been subjected to this. And I just need to let the public know that when it comes to anything, where conflict of interest, we are so in tune with that. We have gone through all kinds of training. If the slightest, faintest, anything that smells of conflict of interest, we recuse ourselves or we announce it so that we're trying to be totally transparent. We're volunteers. We're given our time to do this. And for people to take issue with that and mount these campaigns that you may not even be aware of what's going on behind you. And I just want to let people know that, first of all, that's not fair. I think it's pretty un-American. And that there are avenues for this type of thing to be pursued. If you have an issue with somebody, you don't think they're behaving properly or something, first thing you do is you go to their department head or the head of their board or whatever. You could also talk to town council to see if there is a conflict there, or you can talk to the town manager. But to hide behind a social media post and the anonymity that provides, I think is cowardly and should stop. And you need to put yourself in our shoes, that we're trying to do what's best for the town. Everybody, whether you agree with their opinion or not, is out there because they love this town and they're trying to do the best they can. You may not agree with them all the time, but if you don't agree, then take out nomination papers and run. Thank you.
Thank you. The next thing is approval not required. We do not have any A&Rs, is that correct? Nothing? Okay, no A&Rs.
Mr. Chairman, I'll be doing an awful lot of that all night long.
It's okay. No. I'm sorry. I'm used to looking this way. I should have looked there. But
And I am going to be helpful one of these days, I promise.
I didn't see any when I was in the office a few hours ago. So
Did they do a microphone check with Tom? Because you can never hear Brian.
Yeah. So I want to encourage all the board members, especially Tom, to come up close to the mic. And Paul, they always tell me no one can hear you when you speak, so I'm supposed to remind you of that.
It's called plausible deniability.
Okay, the next is a planning board discussion and decision. Applicant Edward and Cheryl Kiss, site plan review, construction to the existing single-family structure dwelling for an accessory apartment at 202 Quaker Road. And my understanding is we think this is going to be withdrawn, so I'd like to see a recommendation to table this until we get it.
Well, that was the discussion that Corey and I had today, that in the absence of the information from them, we might continue it till the next meeting.
We haven't opened it yet, so can we continue or just table it? What's the proper procedure?
Well, if it's a hearing, and I don't believe it is for a site plan, then we would vote to continue it to the next meeting, but I think the board can by acclamation say, we'll just put it on our agenda for the next meeting.
Okay, everybody all set with that?
Yeah.
They're not here tonight, right? Okay. Next is applicant Bad Martha Farmers Brewery LLC, site plan review to construct a second commercial building at the property located at 876 East Falmouth Highway, adding over 1,000 square feet of gross floor area and to require the addition of more than 5 parking spaces. For the applicant, is BSS Design or?
Notice.
Oh, notices, so, excuse me. That's very good.
Mr. Chairman, the notice of a public hearing for this project was dated March 30th, 2018, and 8 abutters were notified by regular mail.
Thank you. Attorney Clower?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, my name is Kevin Clower. I'm an attorney with Ahmed Clower Law Firm here in Falmouth, and I represent the applicant Bad Martha's Farmer Brewery LLC. They are the prospective buyer of the property located at 876 East Falmouth Highway. I'm joined tonight by Tom Bunker of BSS Design, by Peter Palmetti of Architectural Innovations, and by Jacoby Reed, the head brewer of Bad Martha's Brewing in Edgartown. This site is on a lot located on Route 28 in East Falmouth. It is 2.37 acres, and it's zoned primarily business 2, though a portion of the property is agriculturally zoned. Presently, it's home to Oysters 2 restaurant, as well as a 2-bedroom residential structure and a small commercial kitchen structure. The applicant is seeking to raise the commercial kitchen and to build a retail brewery operation. They operate a farmer's brewery of very similar nature on Martha's Vineyard in Edgartown, and they're seeking to replicate that model, that business model here. So this is the proposed layout with landscaping. What we're proposing is lot coverage by structure of 15.35%, where 40% is allowed by right. Lot coverage by structures, paving, and parking, 58%, where 70% is allowed by right. The Oysters 2 building is non-conforming as to the front yard setback. That non-conformity will not be affected. The square footage of the brewery is approximately 5,400 square feet. This project does require site plan review because of the addition of more than 1,000 square feet of floor area, as well as the requirement of more than 5 parking spaces for what's being proposed. As you all know, the intent of site plan review is to ensure that the design and layout of developments constitutes suitable development, will not result in a detriment to the neighborhood. The applicant and its engineers and designers have gone to great lengths to try to design something that fits in with the area, both with nearby properties and with the agricultural roots of East Falmouth. This use, both as a retail operation and as a restaurant, is a by right use in the B2 zoning district. The appearance will be a substantial improvement over the existing conditions. Presently, there is one existing curb cut on the property here. What we're proposing is the addition of a new curb cut on the westerly portion of the property and a relocation of the existing curb cut to a more appropriate location on the easterly side of the property. This will result in better access to the restaurant within the site and less interference with the buildings. The location of the building was specifically designed for clear traffic flow around both buildings, and this plan has been modified to address the concerns of both the fire department and the engineering department. And I believe you should have updated referrals from both of them within your file. The location of the buildings in the lot was specifically designed for appropriate flow of traffic for both customers, deliveries, and emergency vehicles on an as-needed basis, of course. The appearance of the lot, as proposed, has been substantially softened. Presently, you have what is essentially 4 rows of parking from the street straight through the lot, all the way across. What we're proposing is a substantially improved landscape street view, one row of parking, and then the brand-new building here, which will have an outdoor patio area on the southern side. That patio area itself will be substantially landscaped. That patio is southward-facing in order to maximize sunlight exposure, and it has been removed from Route 28 some distance in order to make as much of an enjoyable outdoor atmosphere as possible. In addition, the locations of these buildings has been designed in this manner to improve the separation, offer some separation between the two buildings to allow for appropriate traffic flow between the two buildings, as much access as possible to the two buildings, and as well as separating the retail customers from the commercial aspects of the parking lot. As it's envisioned, you'd have primarily retail parking in this area here, and for the restaurant in this area here. What we're showing is dumpsters back here, a loading zone here, and a loading zone here. So what we're trying to do is separate the commercial aspects of the parking lot from the retail customer aspects of the parking lot. This application does require a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals due to existing special permits on the property. We have applied for that special permit, and we're scheduled to be heard on May 3rd. I, along with Mr. Bunker, Mr. Palmetti, and Mr. Reed, would be glad to address any questions that this board may have at this time.
Charlotte?
Are there others here who are going to comment on them, and I can wait on my questions till I hear what the comments are?
Yeah, I always go left and right first, so
No, I mean,
No, we'll go to the public, we'll just see what you think.
well, I'm interested that you said that it's a by right use. It's my understanding this is a B2 zone, and is a brewery a by right use there?
The building commissioners determined that a brewery of this operation falls within a retail use. It is designed for retail sales. It is not for wholesale. It is not for manufacturing. Everything is to be sold on site, either for at-home consumption or, in some cases, on-site consumption. So both a restaurant and a retail operation are considered by right uses in the B2 district.
And that was the building commissioner's
We went through this
determination.
exact analysis with him on a similar property located in the business redevelopment, and it was his determination in that situation as well.
I would just like to write the board members, we're looking at a site plan review, and the use inside of the building is the building inspector's genre. You can ask the question, but it's really not something we do at our board. That is specifically the building commissioner's role. We're looking at the first phase of this is site plan review, and then design review, the things that we're doing on this board.
Okay,
John,
Jim,
sorry.
I do have a further comment.
Go ahead.
The site plan works well. There was some back and forth of those of us looking at it earlier. Maybe it'd be better to move the brewery forward so that it would hold the line toward the street. But if you think about it being next to Mahoney's too, and it being a barn-like structure, setting it back so it would have that relationship with Oysters 2 of a barn to a house seems better. And it makes the setback leading you on to the next property. So I actually like the placement on the lot. I think the only concern that would come from it would be the headlights facing toward the houses across the street.
So I think that was part of our rationale as well as the spatial relationship between the two buildings. I think if you presented the brewery next to Oysters 2, I think it presents as one very large structure. So I think from a design standpoint of looking at it from the street, I think having the separation works well. Presently, there is parking in that area. This is all parking along here. So what we're proposing is pretty substantial landscaping, which would help shield this. We'd be happy to add additional landscaping there as necessary to shield any abutters nearby. But we think that whatever we do in terms of the landscaping and the layout will be a pretty substantial improvement and actually reduce the potential headlights that are on the site currently.
Or it could be a low wall. That's the solution that Dunkin' Donuts further along the same road took for the same problem.
So you can't see on that plan.
John, do you have any?
I do, yes. It shows Audubon Circle here. Is that a curb cut or is it not?
It's not a curb cut. It is a paper road that was approved under subdivision, I believe about 18 years ago, 19 years ago. It has not been built. To my knowledge, there is no intent. Mahoney, I believe Paul Mahoney, I think that's his first name. Mr. Mahoney is the owner of the entirety of the subdivision, and I don't believe there's any intent to build that anytime in the near future. So there's no present curb cut there, and there's no road there.
Okay. And on excuse me, on our site plan, it shows the parking, but the people at home, it's going to be difficult for them to see where the parking is for here. Could you show them with your red line where
Sure.
all the parking is?
So this is all striped parking here, which is facing westerly. This parking here is facing southerly. This parking here is facing easterly. There is, I think it might be helpful to look at, that's probably the best plan.
You had it for a second.
Yeah, it was still pretty.
I think this is probably the best plan to look at it with. There's some lateral spaces here. There's additional parking located back here, as well as parking here and here. So we've tried to take advantage of kind of the natural layout of the lot and to put as much parking we can away from the street. But what we had here was existing spaces that faced this direction, and locating them there allowed us to utilize, I think, this space and this space back here more efficiently than otherwise could, because right now we have, for potential deliveries, you'd have a truck coming in this way and then backing into this delivery space right here. So I think by not having additional parking back here, but keeping this parking here, it allows for a better flow around the buildings.
And I read that you have 5 parking spaces reserved for handicap for the
Yep.
brewery.
There's 1, 2, 3 handicap spaces here, and then there's 2 additional handicap spaces over here.
Where's the entrance to the brewery going to
So
be?
the entrance to the brewery would be located right here on the easterly side. So there's
Okay.
two handicap spaces readily accessible to that, and then there's 3 handicap spaces readily accessible to the handicap ramp of Oysters too.
So there's going to be 5 parking spaces for the 2 structures?
Correct.
And where's the van access parking going to be?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Bunker on this.
Yes, I'm Tom Bunker with BSS Design. The van spot is,
This one here?
yes, it's that one right there, yes, right by the present entrance ramp to the restaurant.
Would it be possible to have a second one closer to the entrance to the brewery also? I know you have 2 handicap spaces. Could one of them just,
I'd have
I
to
mean,
see, we need an additional.
I mean, it's quite a
4
distance.
feet, or we need an additional 3 feet for the
I
aisle
think-
between them to make it van accessible. It might be possible.
if it could be done. I mean, it looks like a long distance from where you have it on the plan now to get into the brewery if you're in a van. It's convenient for Oysters too, but
Yeah, we could look into that. It's probably possible.
and I did not have a chance to review the plans before tonight's meeting, but I'm sure somebody else is going to ask about the landscaping. It must be shown on the plans there.
So this is a landscaping plan here, which what showed here is the addition of a number of trees on the street-facing side. The street here, that we're showing a hedge here, as well as additional trees here, 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 and here. So there is pretty substantial landscaping that's being proposed.
Is any of it grass, lawn?
So
Yeah.
this area here shown in this manner is grass. So we've got quite a bit of grass space around the edges of the property.
Okay, and then the curb cut that you have closest to you,
The westerly side.
what is the sight line going to be? Because there's quite a dip in Route 28 right there.
So,
Do you have any concerns about that?
well, any curb cut does require Mass DOT approval because it is a state highway. So we have begun the process with the DOT in order to make sure that the sightlines are appropriate. While there is a dip, I've spent a considerable amount of time out there, and I think that you actually have pretty substantial view of it, even from back here and from this direction, which I'm not going to laser point to the wall.
Right. It's that direction I'd be more concerned about.
It's,
I know there was a fatality there
Yeah,
some years
that's what I'm
back.
remembering.
Somebody pulling out of Muriel Lane, and somebody else was driving too fast, but,
Muriel Lane doesn't have the good visibility, but from the north side of the street, it's actually a long distance going towards Central Ave.
okay.
Visibility, and actually, the distance from this entrance looking east is not as much as west, but it's still sufficient for
Okay.
that road.
All right, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Paul?
Mr. Bunker, I had a question on the Auburn Circle, but I think we've addressed that. How can we get you to put a locus on the site plan?
We can add a locus map.
You know that. But more importantly, Oysters too has a septic system, and you're doing away with that, and you're combining a new septic system of the two properties. Could you explain that a little bit, and who the ownership is on that?
Well, the ownership is going to be under one ownership, the entire parcel.
Okay.
And the Oysters 2 septic system, I believe, is failed. I think that is
So that was
failed.
failing?
It's failed. We have here, yeah, I'm sorry for the graphics aren't that great when they're blown up here, but the yeah, the existing Oysters 2, there's a couple septic tanks and cesspools down here that have failed. The plumbing will have to be rerouted going out this way, and actually there's quite an expensive septic system. It would have to be, because it's in the Coastal Pond Overlay District, we are combining the two flows. There'll be a grease trap and a large septic tank for the restaurant. And for the brewery, actually have to adjust the alkalinity inside, the alkalinity of the effluent coming out, then settling, it gets, the effluent from the two gets combined and metered out, and then up in this area, there's a rather robust treatment denitrification system up in this area here, a BioClear system, and then it does make its way down. So instead of a few small, leaching pits here, that's a very large, spread out soil absorption system here. And so it is, the entire property will be under one ownership. So the system is for one owner, and it's combined and all treated and denitrified.
It wasn't clear it was one ownership.
Yeah.
So it's,
Thank you.
the parcel itself is being sold, and Oysters 2 will be leasing back.
This is actually the responsibility of the health department, health board, not our board, but I was curious. Thank you.
We won't go into that too long, because it is a Board of Health issue, not a planning board issue, so we're just allowed them to talk about it, but that's it. Tim, you're next.
So one of my questions is the parking that you can't see on there, the white lines that are barely visible. You have the two areas that look hashed, that are in the purplish area.
That's the leaching field.
Actually, it came out a little too strong.
Right.
That's the leaching field, just to show that's.
Which is not part of our site plan review.
No, I
Yeah,
just,
you can see the white lines.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
are the parking spaces there.
So-
right, so is that parking for Oysters too,
I
in the
mean,
back?
realistically, the parking can be for either location. There's no, the parking isn't delineated for one or the other. We've supplied enough parking spots on the site to accommodate both. I think there are some spots that probably make the most sense for Oysters 2. I think there's some spots that probably make the most sense for Bad Martha, but they're not going to be specifically designated as for one or the other.
Do you have any idea what the hours of operation will be for Bad Martha? Love the name.
I'm Jacoby Reed, I'm head brewer. The hours of operation would most likely be noon to 9 o'clock.
Noon to 9.
And Oysters 2 typically opens at 5, I believe.
Right. So I'm going to reiterate, because were frequenters of Oysters too.
Mhm.
And coming in and out of there is dangerous. And I think the sight lines, and I don't know because we've never entered there because there's not a curb cut. Is the engineering department at all concerned about the proximity between Muriel Lane and the new curb cut?
I don't believe there's any reference to a concern about it in their referral. They seem to be, in the changes that we did make, I believe they were satisfied with those, with whatever changes we did make. I don't recall a specific concern about Muriel Lane and the new curb cut. It is worth bearing in mind that the existing curb cut is in this location here,
Right.
whereas that's gonna be relocated down here. So you'll have a pretty substantial separation between the two. And Tom just stated that there is, a very, very strong sight lines available in both directions. As to Muriel Lane, I don't recall a specific concern from the engineering department.
You good?
Yeah, I've got a number of comments, and one obviously was determined by the building commissioner, but it gave me pause when I saw a potential canning area downstairs, because that's more like manufacturing to
So,
do incentive.
Bad Martha sells not growlers. If you go to a brewery, you can oftentimes buy a growler, which is, how much, like a liter, 2 liters of beer?
64 ounces.
64 ounce in a growler. Whereas Bad Martha sells larger cans, again, for retail. So you would buy, one can, I think, is 3 beers?
2 beers.
2 beers. So, you would buy that and bring it home as a retail purchase. So when I visited the Edgartown site, I bought some cans, and I brought them home with me, and I enjoyed them at a later date, and they were fantastic.
But they're not expected to then be sold to, say, Cappies?
No, this is not for wholesale at all. The intent here is for retail. That is what is allowed in the zoning district, and that is what the applicant is proposing for retail sales. Whether it be at home, retail direct to consumers, or retail on site, it's retail.
I understand that this is not in our purview, but thank you for answering that question. I'm concerned because when you said there's extensive landscaping, I see 3 bushes or trees or something where the cars are parked facing out across Route 28. Being open at 9 o'clock, closing at 9, those headlights are going to be troubling to the people who live across the street. So either I would like to see something on the order of CVS, like a privet hedge, or, as Charlotte said, a low stone wall that would be high enough, and I think a low stone wall would be extremely attractive there, but it would be high enough to block the headlights from the cars as they're pulling in and out. So I would like to see that. When I looked at the plans, the thought occurred to me, okay, it's a barn. I really love it. I love the silo, the look of the barn. But why is there the corrugated metal siding? Why not go all the way and put barn board there? Paint it red, for heaven's sake, like a barn, But I'm being a little bit facetious here. Why the corrugated metal?
Bring up the whole team at this point.
Yeah. Peter Penn, Architectural Innovations. It was just to kind of differentiate between the post and beam structure in the front with kind of more of the brewery part in the back, and it was just to kind of, because it extended so long, it was just to give it a different kind of layer to it.
Good point, but we're going to come and design review, and I want to discuss.
I was combining the
Two
two,
and all
as
at
we
one time?
frequently do.
Okay, then I was going to wait.
Because they're kind of part and
Good, okay.
parcel.
Thank you.
I share that concern, and in fact, I'm very concerned that we're putting corrugated steel buildings on our main road. Part of this board's goals is to really increase the quality of construction and view and have buildings that are meant to look like and last forever. And I don't think on a main road, it's not working for me to have a corrugated steel building. They work, I understand, I know how much they cost. And
Yeah, it wasn't excuse me, it definitely wasn't a cost thing. And it wasn't, we're not talking like galvanized steel, it would be the color that actually even red.
It's like a Morton building?
I was yanking a chain here, you understand,
No,
saying
but
red
I'm
barn.
I'm
but-
serious, I'm just saying, we weren't really envisioning it being stainless in color. I don't think, honestly, I don't think that doing it in barn siding would affect us one way or the other, honestly. The change.
Good.
Bob, you're up next.
Yeah, I see you asking for a reduction in parking spaces. Okay, that's fine with me. What about lighting? I wasn't able to dig into this to see what the lighting plan was.
I don't know that we actually submitted a lighting plan.
Okay, that's why I didn't see it.
That's exactly what I see, Mr. Leary.
You're going to have to resubmit it.
Yeah, that's fine.
We'll see it next time.
Yep, so we'll submit a lighting plan with an updated landscaping plan, which will be updated with the other things we've talked about tonight anyways.
Okay. That's it for me.
Well, since we're going back and forth, one of the things, as a requirement for this and anyone else coming for a major building on our street where we do design review, we need to have a color PDF so we can see what the buildings look like. So you got to come back and show us some elevations with color. And I have a real reservation about approving a corrugated steel building on a main road. And then the last thing, John and everyone touched about it, but what happens if Audubon Circle gets built and all of a sudden now we have those two things that doesn't work, having that curb cut right next to that? Isn't that a dangerous situation?
Well, I'll tell you, it would actually work much better for us to have access off of Audubon Circle in a lot of ways, which is something we're certainly not opposed to. That being said, we don't own it and don't know when or if it'll ever be built. What I can say is that we would certainly work hand in hand with Mr. Mahoney in order to explore whether it be an opening in this area here and a closure of this curb cut here. But we wouldn't want to, we can't plan on that happening because we don't know if it will.
I know, but subdivisions that are approved can come out of nowhere at any time, and I have a real hard time about approving a curb cut so close to a street. From what I've learned on this board, I'd ask your engineer, how does he feel if that was an active road and having a curb cut there, would he design it the same way?
If that was an active road and our client had rights to use it, I would not design it the same way. And actually, in fact, I have toward the back, the northeast corner, the right rear corner, I do have a pair of catch basins there, anticipating a curb cut. If Audubon Circle got built, then you could go out there, and the circulation would work properly.
How many lots are on Audubon Circle?
3.
Are they residential lots? And it looks, I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to look up the subdivision. Are they conforming lots or is it a cluster?
They're conforming lots. They're in a very odd shape and configuration, and they kind of almost wrap around this lot.
But they're conforming so they could happen like that?
With the creation of a road.
With the creation of a road?
Sure. And I think it's worth pointing out that Audubon Circle, the layout would not, this is the road layout. The road itself might be located on the far easterly side of the road layout, or because it wouldn't necessarily be located against this black line here, against our property line. So even if that road was ever created, there's a substantial amount of room where that road might happen.
There isn't any way that you could explore the possibility. I wouldn't expect you to pave the entire section of road, the length of the property, but maybe there's a way just to do the first couple feet and then turn into the parking lot from there?
Well, the problem becomes I think from a stacking standpoint, leaving, if you were coming in here, for emergency vehicles, if you came in here and had them bang a quick left, that becomes very difficult for an emergency vehicle.
Yeah.
So, to the extent that was ever explored, I think the northerly portion would make the most sense, because right now, if you had an emergency vehicle coming in, there is enough room here for an emergency vehicle to turn here, but if you were coming in here and had to make that same turn, it just becomes more difficult with having access, in this area here. So you know, we don't own that, and we don't currently have rights to it. It's something we're certainly would explore and are open to, and I think in many ways makes the most amount of sense for both properties. But until and if that road is developed, which is a substantial cost, that is not my client's obligation, we don't.
It's almost he who curb cuts first last. So.
No, but that's an approved curb cut already.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen. If they wanna do it, they can do it. So, and if they do, we have a problem. I don't recall putting a curb cut so close to a street like that intentionally. I mean, I see them left over from 50, 60 years ago, but I haven't seen it on any recent plans.
I would think the state would have difficulty approving that curb cut. Only because if that's an approved street already, even though it's a paper road, I would never, being in that position, approve. I mean, it's right on top of.
Well, we have begun the process of, have we submitted to the state, Tom? No, we will, you know, any curb cut here is obviously subject to the approval of the state.
Right.
And if the state tells us no, then that changes the dynamic, obviously. But that hasn't happened to this point.
I mean, have you looked at the options? Were the state to say it's too close to that, to that potential road, what you would do?
We've looked at a number of options. You know, what we came down for the current condition of the properties, for what we're proposing now, and in hopes of moving this forward with some relative speed, we thought this was the best way to address it.
Is there a way to have it conditionally approved, that if in fact the street gets built, the curb cut will get relocated?
Well, we don't currently have rights to use Audubon Circle. We would need to negotiate that with Mr. Mahoney.
It's a private road.
Wow.
So it's a conundrum.
Yeah.
Well, can the driveway in just be moved further towards the west?
It'd almost be going straight into the building.
Unfortunately, it would.
Yeah.
Can't get too close to Carmel Lane.
It's still very close to that.
Yeah, it is.
To Audubon Circle.
We're planning for the future here, and someday that road is gonna get built.
But it seems that we're trying to
Maybe.
plan for a remote
Other
contingency.
subdivisions have been abandoned. I can
Or
think of-
turn into 40Bs. Which has a lot more cars.
I'm not going to touch that one. I think it's probably best if I don't go down that road, that particular road.
I mean, maybe now would be the time to talk to
Well, we've had some
Mahoney's.
discussions with Mr. Mahoney, but we haven't, I think, gone as far as securing rights, because he's not intending to build it. Now, of course, he's saying that in this moment, and he has the right to change his mind.
Right.
We fully understand that. And while we'd certainly be happy to condition the plan, condition an approval, we can't agree to put our access there until we have rights to use that access. It's something that we can explore with Mr. Mahoney between now and the next hearing.
Jim,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
they're going to explore it before they come back, but it seems that we're trying to plan for a very remote contingency at the moment. We'll have more information when they come back.
But that's what we do, we are the planning board.
If that can be arranged, would the board be comfortable with with an approval that required an eventual curb cut to there?
I like the way it looks now, I just can't see it working if that becomes an active street, and I think it's problematic, so. And once it's there, we got a I don't know the solution, it'd be good, why don't you work on it?
But what you're saying, if I'm hearing you correctly, is that we put in a caveat that if that is ever developed, that
I
the
think
owners of
Mr.
this,
Leary had suggested that.
yeah, would then be moved. But that's going to be a private road, so you'd still have to get permission.
I mean, obviously, if we can secure eventual potential access to it, which I don't know at this
Who
moment.
knows?
The Mahoney owns all that property, and there's nothing there right now. I wonder if you'd be amenable to moving the location of the paper road.
We'd have to see where it goes to his curb cut. I bet you it's balanced to go with his.
But it would be off Antlers. Sure, it would be a little further up, be further east of Antlers Shore, which would be a better location for that
Except you
as
have
well.
It's oddly problematic being right across from another street anyway, right?
Right,
Right.
Yeah,
yeah.
it's probably,
And
you
on
know.
a curve.
Yeah, and on the curve. And it was a long time ago, but I remember the fatal accident on that street as well.
I had friends that were in a non-fatal that changed their lives forever.
I'd rather not get into negotiating the relocation of Mr. Mahoney's curb cut, because I don't have any
Why don't you work on
ability to
yours?
say that.
Yeah.
Agree to that.
I'm glad I'm not Tom.
Okay.
So, okay, so you need, you have some comments? You have
We certainly do while
We
we're
have-
here.
lights, additional landscaping, questions about curb cut, design review, we want to see the look of the building with the color and the materials on the outside we're saying are important to us. Anything else? John?
I have one other question on the site plan. You show the parking to the left of Oysters 2, future parking. From that location, how do they get into the restaurant? Is there a second entrance in the back?
There is an entrance on the side, right here. Is it right here?
It's right towards the front of the building.
Right there.
So is there one there now,
Chimney.
or?
No,
Where's the
there's,
entrance?
there's a basement entrance, so you have to
This was
make a
called
walkway
years
or
ago.
something.
You'd have to do
From
something,
that side.
yeah, because you're not showing any entrance from that area. At least on this plan, it shows, it appears that there's, in the back left-hand corner, there's a set of stairs or something there, but I don't know what that is for sure.
That's not a good entrance there.
Okay,
That's what?
That's an emergency. It's not designed to be an entrance.
so you have
It's an
to,
exit.
you have to find a way for the people to get from that parking.
Yeah, we can make a walk-up around.
That's it for me, thanks, Jim.
Anybody else? Anyone from the public have a comment?
I can address the entrance.
Step up and introduce yourself, please.
Bob Coggett, owner of Oysters 2. Thanks for the hearing today. I did have concern, and I expressed it about the entrance, access to the entrance from the left side of the building as you face it from Route 28, because it's a lower elevation, but I was told that the elevation is going to be raised up. But I did express concern about getting customer access to our entranceway, either a walkway on the front or around the back. So I don't know what the resolution to that is, but that's something you can work on. Yeah. And as far as the parking with the cars facing Route 28, that exists now. And I think, and I can't say for certain, I think just about every house across from that has built a stockade fence, probably out of necessity at some point, a long history of the building there. So I don't know if that's a huge concern, because I think the remedies are already there. But the landscaping could be in addition to that. That's all I wanted to add at this point, other than we're excited about the possible addition of Bad Martha's to the area. We feel it's going to be an asset to the town and help draw some people to the East Falmouth area. So we're excited about the potential partnership that we could attain from that happening. Thank you.
Thank you.
You could become Bad Oysters too. Oh, that's right,
On
never mind.
on the lights, I think it is important, and we've done it on other sites, but one of the things that I wanted to just double up on it, we did it on CVS. However, we didn't make them plant them tight enough. It's still
Yeah.
3 or 4 years later, and the
Yeah.
headlights still
That's
come
right.
through.
Yeah.
And it is important, and those fences come down, having my fence blown down in this last storm, I don't see fences being permanent at all. And it is, we think it's responsibility of the commercial owner to protect the residential. So you need to come up with some kind of plan to prevent that from happening. We're looking in the long view, okay? We're looking 20, 30, 40 years, not just what's there now, maybe 50 years. So I think you need to solve that problem. I know if I was sitting there in that house and all of a sudden people start putting out headlights would be coming in them, I wouldn't be happy with it. You gotta work with your neighbors. So figure, it isn't that bad. You can work it out.
We're not opposed to doing
a
something.
solution.
Yeah, we'll work on a potential solution. So just to review, unless, I'm sorry, I jumped back up, I didn't know.
Anybody else in the public?
I'll jump
Do you
back
want to
up.
review all the points and we'll continue?
I just want to make sure we're not missing anything.
Okay.
Paul's, Mr. Drewley had asked about making one of the handicap spaces van accessible on the Bad Martha side. Mr. Trier had requested a locust map, which very simple fix. Let's see, Ms. Kerfoot had asked about a privet hedge or a stone wall, as well as wood siding for the barn structure. And Mr. Leary had asked about a lighting plan, which will be included with the updated landscape items, showing the colors and the materials, and then potential entrance and walkway. And then, the other obvious question is the curb cut. We can certainly have that discussion with Mr. Mahoney. It may be a long discussion. I don't know that there is a quick and easy answer to that. But we can certainly look into it and let the board know what we find. We're not opposed to an eventual access off of Audubon Circle, but we can't agree that we will do it in this moment because we can't. But we're certainly not opposed to it. I think, as a brief statement, I think we oftentimes hear people complaining about how East Falmouth gets left out sometimes and how there's not enough good development and how things get stuck in East Falmouth. And I think this is a situation where we have what, in my opinion, and I'm biased, I understand that, this is my client, but in my opinion, I think this is an exciting project. I think it's a really great project, and I think this is a great location for it. And I think this is the kind of thing we should be encouraging. So, I, as not only as an attorney, but as someone who lives in town, I think I'm encouraged by the desire to do something of this nature, and I think it's a really great addition for the area.
Just to make it clear, the things you just briefed on, we want to see a PDF showing the colors and materials of the proposed building with the windows and doors and colors so we can see it. And not to make you redesign the other building, but maybe a picture of Oysters 2 so we can see how they match together, because that's what we're really doing. We're looking at a design here. It's something that's going to be on our main road for a long time, longer than most of us will be alive, so it's important to us. John?
So just one other question of the applicant. What if you left the curb cut where it is right now and added the second curb cut where you're posing it to the left side? Does that make it difficult for your deliveries?
Well,
or?
I think it's difficult because you have access right in front of a handicap ramp.
Yeah.
I think if you were designing this today, this is not how you design it. Because you've got a ramp coming down from the building into oncoming traffic.
Yeah.
So,
Other than that, would it work with your flow?
yeah, I think it probably would.
Just asking.
Yeah, and that's certainly something we can explore in the event we can't come to
10 feet over, something.
to an agreement with Mr. Mahoney.
It is
Ideally,
it is
that
a
looks the
pretty-
best.
Yeah.
But I think that's certainly something we can explore in the event that we can't promise you that we would change our access at some point.
I mean, if Audubon Circle ever gets built, wouldn't that be a second egress and entrance for Mahoney's, for the landscaping place also?
I don't know, and I wouldn't want to make any statement.
I mean, I think it certainly would add a lot of traffic at that one location if they did that. I think they'd want to have their parking lot have a second
I
entrance
don't
and exit.
disagree, but I don't want to make, I don't know
Sure.
the answer to that question.
Okay. Thank you.
So we'll see you again.
When can we come,
I was going to make an observation. Recently, my wife and I went to dinner there with our 15-year-old daughter, and it was early evening. And we had a lovely dinner, and she looked around and said, "How come everybody's old?" So I guess we're at the tail end of the early bird, I don't know. But hopefully the clientele changes as you get later in the evening. But it was very nice dinner. How come everybody's old?
I don't think I'm going to comment on that, Mr. Dryer. I don't think there's anything good I can add.
Maybe need a separate entrance for the early bird,
Home delivery.
for the walkers.
Nothing wrong with us old people.
As my mother's fond of saying, I was born at night, but it wasn't last night.
Okay.
So I guess the question begs itself, when can we be back in front of you? I don't think we need, I mean, other than speaking with Mr. Mahoney, I don't think we need a lot of time to deal with these changes.
Well, I believe the board currently has a tentative meeting for April 24th. Do you think you can get things turned around?
I would love to say yes, and I think we can have the plans changed for you in advance, in a week from now. I don't know that we'll have any sort of resolution for you on the Audubon Circle, just to be perfectly frank with you.
What would work for you?
If you had anything on May 1st, or is there a hearing May 1st, I suppose?
Well, the board and I were discussing this. I personally am not available May 1st. I have a date with my town of Kingston prior to town meeting. I'm still sort of helping them through the transition, as is oftentimes the case with planners, as they're hiring someone new. So I'm currently engaged for May 1st, but the week after, if the board wants to meet on May 8th, if that's in the realm.
Can I just have a moment to speak with you?
Absolutely. And I'll just take this moment to remind everybody in the future that when they bring something for design review, we absolutely, positively want colored PDF drawings that we can show on the screen, because that's the only way people at home can see that. I don't know if you ever watched our things on television, but holding plans, it just doesn't work. I watch lots of meetings, and we made that policy a year ago, and that's the way it's going to be, going all the time. You got to bring, for design review, as soon as you go to site plan review, which means 5 parking spaces, 1,000 feet, you're in design review again, so we're going to want to see what the building's going to look like. We want a materials list, the windows, the whole thing.
I think realistically, in order to address the concerns appropriately, it's probably, I don't want to waste the board's time by coming back next week and not having had sufficient time to get the answers you've requested. So I think we'd have to look at May 8th.
So we need a motion for that? Or how does it work? Do we need a motion to say May 8th, or we just continue it to May 8th?
Just continue it to May 8th.
I think continuing to May 8th is sufficient. Once again, as I pointed out previously, I am probably the least familiar person with your zoning bylaw, but that will change.
That's okay.
But at this point, I think if the board moves to continue to May 8th and by vote by acclamation, however you want to do that, then you're fine.
So we'll continue to May 8th. We'll see you then.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay.
May 8th.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a flying gimmick.
Yeah. I think it's great, except for...
Yeah, I know.
Okay, we've already finished. We shouldn't be discussing it. Next thing is planning board discussion, revised architectural plans for site plan review, the decision of Michael Connolly, 87 Gunning Point Avenue. Has everyone on the board had time to go up and look at these changes in the plans?
Yes.
They were sent to us.
Yeah, we've got them at home. Does anyone have any comment on them?
I think originally it was going to be spiral stairs,
Right.
which I think this is a much better
Oh.
solution than a spiral stair.
Oh, yeah.
So, and it's a common look. You
Yeah,
drive
it's
all
very
down.
similar.
You
It's a
drive
Cape
down
Cod.
Palmer Ave, it's the same type of
It's definitely a
situation.
Cape Cod
So,
look.
yeah, I do not have a problem with it.
I have no problem.
Everybody all set?
I don't have any problem.
So, do I hear a motion to approve?
I will move that we accept the revised architectural plans for Michael Connolly, 87 Gunning Point Avenue.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Thank you.
Comment? Thank you, Chairman Fox. Thank you, members of the planning board. That was painless, and for that, I much appreciated.
Getting your drawings in early and sent to us to all look at in advance makes life a lot easier.
File.
Okay. Davis Street's multifamily district. Discussion, we're gonna keep this on, is there anything new from the two of you that have been working on,
Three of us.
Three of us,
Yes,
sorry.
Pam, Pat, and Charlotte.
okay?
And the only thing that we've had no progress, but we did the three of us meet with Tom so that we would feel that within the board, we're up to speed. And I would say we had a good time, but have nothing new to report.
You had a good time?
We did.
That's not what we're sending you there for.
It was a chick meeting.
Tom is charming.
No
and we
comment.
don't wanna leave.
I can tell you something that I think we gotta do a better job on communication, because I got a call from a property owner on Davis Straits on my commercial business, nothing to do with planning board, and I asked them if they've even heard of our reset, and they said no. And I found out, so I don't think we're doing a good job of communicating with the property owners, and maybe we gotta reach out a little bit differently. So I would like to resend a letter to all the property owners with the link to the Davis Straits reset at the Cape Cod Commission, and advising them they should become familiar with this, because there's gonna be opportunities in the future to talk about it. But I'm not kidding, one of the property owners today didn't know anything about it.
Right, I'm not a bit surprised. You remember, we did invite them to the hearing
No
that
one
you
came.
arranged for,
Right. Yeah,
but
we-
Peter Hargraves came. And
Right.
Peter Hargraves said something very important at that meeting. He said, until we have something actionable, no one's going to come. And I agree with him. And so what we were trying to work toward, and it's not true that nothing got done in a way, we discussed that. And that what we want for our next step is, remember, Brian would advise us, we want our purpose statement that we've been working on, and we want to have some of the very specific things about lot size, all the different measures that you need in order to fit in, and what they would look like as a draft for us all to look like. So that's what we're working toward and hope to have very soon, because then we have something actionable and we're likely to actually capture some attention with it. So sending a letter to say, take a look, sure, it's a reminder, but we're not going to really get any response until there's something to respond to.
What about, we had also talked that we were gonna have the Cape Cod Commission come back and talk to us.
Indeed, and then it turned out they needed a new director, we needed a new director.
Yeah.
We have been on hold for reasons not of our own making. So we're hoping now, and that's what the point of our meeting was, to make this a priority and to move it along.
Okay, so let's reach out to the Cape Cod Commission then, and have them come back for,
Well, Tom might want to speak to this because he's already been talking with them.
Yeah, during the interview process, I actually met with Sharon Rooney, the chief planner for the Cape Cod Commission, in finding out more about the community and moving forward. Since then, we were on a call, Corey and I were on a call the other day about some other joint ventures with the Cape Cod Commission. We've got a second call coming with them next week. I anticipated I might actually go to the commission that day for the call and just be on site and just spend the rest of that morning or whatever visiting with them. I really want to spend the majority of a day there with the commission, having them get me up to speed on the history of the Cape Cod Commission and working with Falmouth and what things we have done, what things we are currently doing, what things that we're looking at into the future, as well as understanding better working with the commission. So the Cape Cod Commission is a day trip for me that I'm going to be spending an extensive amount of time there, but I need to give them some lead time to let them know what I'm doing. We've had a couple of phone calls and some emails about it, so we're moving forward with that as well.
so then, sometime in the month of May, could we at least have a time scheduled with them? Not that it happens in May, but we know in May it's gonna happen in June or July, a target for that discussion with them.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Well, just to review, we had asked, before all the personnel changes, we had asked the Cape Cod Commission to come back to us, their planning division to come back to us with draft bylaws that will allow us to realize the Davis Strait plan and to begin with the multi-family housing, because that's our top priority in that area. And I would hope that part of your agenda there is to be sure that our priorities are in line with theirs, that that's still the
Excuse
top
me, Corey, can you
priority.
get those guys? I can't hear everything.
That that's still the top priority. I know there are other things in the works for the town, or I suspect it, but that this would be at the top of the list with the Cape Cod Commission of Planning.
And if not, we'll move it up the list.
Okay, just wanted, because we're going to keep it on the agenda still.
Thank you.
That's the plan. So we talk about it every week so it doesn't slip away.
Right, I know if you're reporting on people saying things to you, people say things to me, and I'm sure they do to Pat and Pam, because we're, of course, talking about the Davis Strait reset plan. And what I hear most often is to remember, it's not just apartment buildings. It's cluster housing, it's townhouses. There are all forms of multifamily housing, not exceeding 2.5 stories probably, but lots of forms and lots of land use and lots of density. And what we'll be looking for is a lot of flexibility in whatever it is we come up with.
Well, it's not only housing, it's business as
Yes,
well.
and that's what
Well,
I want to
that's
talk about
Yeah.
too, is I want to have a discussion with them about not only a limited amount of units per acre, but a minimum amount of
Yes.
units, that you have to have some.
Exactly.
No more
It-
single family in that
Yeah,
area, right?
Or if you're building a commercial property, you better be planning on putting an apartment or two on the second and third floor,
Right.
because that's where we need them.
Right. And that's in their plan. So to
Right.
ask them to give us the bylaws to affect the plan, that will be there.
And then maybe even some schematics of what those buildings would look like, so that we can have something to talk about the property owners. This is what it could look like.
Well, because it's the introduction, as it says in the plan, to form-based zoning for the town.
Right.
So chances are there'll be silhouettes, probably, hopefully, more than a dozen, so that we don't have a cookie-cutter look.
Right.
And this town actually has, they're not just Cape Cod colonials. We had some wonderful old Victorians. Everyone who follows the Enterprise and sees one a week in the I Remember section, we had some wonderful old houses that we've lost and public buildings lost. And we can recreate some of those shapes, and they will give us the size to put in the mixed use that we're looking for.
It's interesting you bring that up. I'm sorry, Paul. Do you want to go ahead?
No, go ahead, go ahead.
I was talking to a woman who is very interested in multifamily housing, and she brought up, she's lived here for, like, I think 150 years, and she said that, not really, that she remembers those old Victorian houses. And she said, is there any reason that they couldn't build, you'd build new, old? And the way she pictured it and her description, it was lovely. It was something that would just fit in with the town, and I would love to see that sort of old style blended in with whatever else, just multi-facades, and, I think it could be.
Right, well, we don't want it to become, a little Epcot Center. This doesn't have to be just a Disneyland. There are modern buildings that look good, not as many maybe, but there can be. So it'd be many styles.
Yeah, I'd love to see sort of that mix of
Right.
modern and,
Yeah, and I'd like to see something other than gray and white, too.
Right.
And,
Really?
and when,
how about corrugated?
with the, convening MD, to me, that looks like another CVS. So we've got that,
Exactly.
the CVS, and then the other CVS. It's pretty much the same design and the same cladding and all that. And people think, oh, that's Cape Cod, everything is gray, and it really isn't.
Over the
It's,
past 4 months.
and
it
we
has
actually,
been
you
very
look
good.
around town, there's a lot of brick in town, too.
Mhm.
And there used to be a lot more brick. So I like a mixture of materials.
Oh, I do
and
too.
shapes and colors.
Yep.
There are mixtures and mixtures, and then there's McMenemy's.
Then there's what?
McMenemy's.
Yeah.
Portland, Oregon.
No, right there on Davis Straits.
Paul, do you have something?
Yeah, getting back to the issue of publicity and getting the message out, we've had some pretty good publicity from Falmouth Enterprise when we had the hearings and whatnot. Maybe we have to continue to encourage those kinds of articles, maybe even write some articles and suggest those to the Falmouth Enterprise. But that's a good way of getting the public more aware of what's the Davis Straits reset is really happening. So I think it's important to continue doing that. And we've had some good success with that, but I think we need to do more of that, not only to the property owners, which are, unless we have something not very responsive, but the public would be very interested as well.
Didn't they cover it when the presentation was made by the Cape Cod Commission?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, there was a
But
good
that's quite a
article.
while ago now.
Yeah.
Might be
That's my
time for
point.
another. If you want
Yeah.
that done, I'd be glad to give it a try.
Absolutely.
Okay, making a note.
Never volunteer. You
Okay.
know that.
Oops.
So moving on, another discussion, the Accessory Apartment Advisory Review Committee. Tricia?
Okay, we're going to be meeting on the 25th, but before that happened, I requested of Virginia Valley Land, she took me up on it, that the two of us meet, because I was having some difficulty. The first meeting was very, very good, very succinct. The second meeting was more of a hodgepodge. It wasn't as effective. And I blame some of it on, I have difficulty discerning things when there are a whole lot of people talking all together at once. I can't do that. So I wanted to sit down with Virginia and see if we might be on the same page as to the directions we were going, and we were. So it's essentially, as I had emailed out on February 26th, the things that happened in the first meeting. We believe that there are likely to be 3 bylaws that come out of this. One is going to be to include the remaining 4 coastal ponds in the bylaw, and she and I both agree, we don't know why those additional 4 coastal ponds can't just be added into the bylaw that already exists. Brian seemed to think that there was a reason they couldn't be, and I don't know why, so that has to be explored more into the coastal pond bylaw.
Right.
There are 4 ponds that were not included in there. The reports just came out on them last year. So that's going to be one that will have to be changed in town meeting.
Okay, but keep in mind, this is not a change to the accessory apartment bylaw. This is a
I
change
know, but
to-
all this goes
I
to it.
understand, right, but it's not a change
I
of our
understand.
bylaw, it's a change of another bylaw.
I understand. But here's another one, though, too, because, again, the Coastal Pond Overlay District, 240-98A, is going to have to read, and we brought that up, all parcels within a Coastal Pond Overlay District, because we came up with it has to be a 5-lot subdivision or 5 acres before that applies. So that will be, we've got to bring all of these in, because all of this was brought up at that accessory apartment bylaw. Then there are going to be
But that again,
changes to the accessory apartment bylaw, Jim.
is it a change or is that a Board of Health issue?
No, there will be changes to it, because not substantial. The Board of Health is working towards accommodation if there are no additional bedrooms put into it. That probably should be spelled out a little bit more succinctly in our bylaw so that people understand this and they don't trip. So that we want to make sure that no increase in bedrooms does not mean you've got to.
Here's the thing, though, I think we're talking Board of Health things. Isn't that a Board of Health job? And not ours?
It is, but
So,
the
but here,
problem
we're having this
is-
big discussion in the newspaper and everything about changes to the accessory apartment bylaw. But the majority of them are Board of Health decisions. And when we passed this bylaw, I remember saying, look, the building department has their role, the Board of Health has theirs, and we have ours. And now they're kind of saying that we're responsible for the Board of Health issues, and we're not.
No, but they're all part of the bylaw and making it work, Jim. So the question is, how do we make the bylaw
They're all
work?
part of the Code of Falmouth.
How do we make it work so that people are not so disappointed because they come with their hopes up and then they're dashed? They need to have a greater understanding of what can and will be allowed. Whether that comes with something on the town website explaining the accessory apartment bylaw and how you go about doing it, a flow chart, if this, then this, so that they don't come in with unreal expectations.
And I do think that's why we need the coordination of those committees, so that, I mean, we can't act as an island
Right.
with no causeways in between, because it's so interrelated. And if people understand that if they add a bedroom, it triggers something else with the Board of Health. And so I think any bylaw has to be integrated so that all the boards involved are talking the same language. And I think that's where we sort of went off with, when the Board of Health said, oh, no, you can't do that.
Well, I know I never went off. I always said, the Board of Health has their responsibilities and we have ours. And we can't tell them what to do and they can't tell us what to do.
Nor should they.
Right.
But as long as everyone's on the same page, so that if we say, if there's no additional bedrooms, you know, it's going to be a bylaw, and that bylaw has to have components.
Right. We have our bylaw and they have theirs, though. We don't write Board of Health bylaws. Okay.
But
And
Jim,
here's the thing that I want to make a point of. I believe that we need to have, I envision to have some kind of educational tutorial process with the building commissioner, someone from the Board of Health, and us, and show, here's how you do it. And each group says, here's what we want, here's what we want, and here's what we want. But we can't be saying, you have to do this, and it's a Board of Health issue.
definitely not.
I've got to keep those separate.
I mean, I think it would be great if we could get together, which is what I think we
Right.
tried to do ages ago.
We're all saying the same thing, it's kind of.
We are, but how is it incorporated in a bylaw so that we don't create unreal expectations of the people who say, oh, I can do this? One of the big things is going to be, how is the square footage measured?
right, there are several issues that will appear in the bylaw, but I think what's confusing the conversation now is there'll really be at least 2 documents and maybe more, because one will be something on the web that is a document, but I don't think of it that way. But there'll be the bylaw changes, and those will come forward, and they're clearly part of what the planning board has authority over. But there will also be references to the other places that you need to look. But then the second document would be probably a booklet, accessory apartment bylaw, that contains every single thing that you need to do in order to get an accessory apartment. So I come in, I want an accessory apartment, I go to the planning board, if people come to see us as being the source of complete information, go to the planning board, I pick up the little pamphlet, and it tells me exactly, here's the flow chart of the work, this is my first step, second step, third step, these are the things I need to do, and here are the ancillary materials. That's what's missing now, because the first stumbling block really was a misunderstanding.
Right.
Our accessory apartment bylaw says single house, and the health board wasn't understanding that they remain single dwellings. They're not looking at it that way. So that was the big thing to iron out, and that solves the sewer thing. But then there's also the, how do you use this? People are stumbling all over the place trying to do this thing. It's terrific that it's so popular. It's great. It just needs to be easier.
It's just not fair to the people who are trying to
Well,
do
we're
it.
learning.
If you go down
Yeah.
to the building department, at any time, they have a big shelf there with about 20 different things how to do. If you want to build a shed on your property, there's a whole folder about everything that, how to do the shed. If you want to find out if you have a buildable lot, there's a buildable lot worksheet.
See, that's
It-
great.
It's all there, and we need to develop, it's more of an education
Right.
process for a lot of these issues, and we need to, whether it be a video, a pamphlet, or a how-to tutorial,
Yeah.
we need, obviously, that's where we're having a problem, people don't understand.
It's probably
about
all of the
educating
above.
public.
Right, we need to work on that.
And that's why if you have each component with that linkage, then,
Right.
you know, that presentation you made at the UU, for example, if you did that again, except with each component part,
Right.
so people,
I realize we have to, that's why my idea is to get the building inspector and somebody from the Board of Health and put together a presentation.
I would like them to all come here, so we're all talking to each other, not sort of
Right.
around each other.
Well, we could do that first, but then what I was thinking, when we did the accessory apartment bylaw, we went to FCTV, Pat, Bob, and I gave a presentation on it, and then we sent that out to every town meeting member twice. So by the time the vote came up, they had already,
Right.
they were all known. And we need to do that same kind of level next time on this.
But let's get the
Final
boards
solution.
together talking, because I think one of the most important things
Agreed.
is for us to understand where the Board of Health is, where the building is, building department. I mean,
That's a
I'm
really
big on
good
that
idea.
coordinating.
Really good idea. I think we should
But
have.
that's what we're talking about. That came out of that larger meeting, so that this little group that you're asking me to report on has representatives from each one of those committees.
Well, I think after you sort of coalesce that the boards. or-
Jim doesn't want me to talk. I'm reporting on the meeting.
No.
And this I'm saying, there are gonna have to be
I'm
some changes
good.
in our
I'm
bylaw.
good. Well, I agree with you.
Thank
I think-
you.
No, but you say our bylaw, and I say bylaws, because I don't think it's our bylaw, I think it's a Board of Health issue that needs to be changed. But
They're not gonna change it. What they're doing is putting in more policies that will cover these, because these issues came up. And one of the things of unreal expectations is, do we have to put in a minimum lot size? Is it going to be a 2-track minimum lot size if you're in a sewer district? Can you have a smaller lot size? But if you're in a place like, I keep bringing up what's going on in my backyard right now, a septic system, it has to have a reserve.
But that's when we have that discussion, I want to participate in it, because I can tell you, having developed, I know how the restrictions are already there for the reserve
But
and the
I know they
setbacks.
are, Jim.
And to add more restrictions, I don't think is the right solution.
I'm not arguing with you, but are we setting up unreal expectations of people?
Well,
I don't
the
know.
first thing you do is you get your septic plan,
Yeah.
and
Right.
you look at how many bedrooms your septic
That's the very
system is
first thing you
designed
have to
for.
do.
Right.
Right.
That's not rocket science, that's looking at a number on a plan.
I built 7 bedroom homes on 10,000 square foot lots in this town.
You can.
And you can do it, but the first thing you do is go to the engineer and say, how's the septic system gonna
Sure.
fit? That's before you even design anything,
Yeah.
and they have to do that.
Okay, now then it comes into this flow chart that should be on the
Turns out
website,
that's
the
step
town
one.
website. These are the steps you've got to take initially so that you're not going to be disappointed in the end.
Because that's something that's happening with home sales. In my neighborhood alone,
Yes, it
3
is.
people have redone their septic systems because they're selling their house.
Right.
And, I mean, that's, I don't know. Like I said, it's not rocket science.
These are all things that are being discussed, and I wanted to understand that I was hearing it correctly,
Yeah.
which is why I sat down with Virginia.
I think the biggest misconception is everybody thought they were gonna walk in and say, I wanna do this, and it was by right, and I didn't have to.
Blow through the Board of Health and blow through the building
Yeah.
codes and just do it.
And when they find out, well, there are actually steps that you have to go through.
You know what I think is gonna happen? I think there are gonna be people who initially I went with a friend of mine who was selling her house, and actually, she has the right number of bedrooms, didn't add any, and didn't need to replace her septic system, and could have gotten a permit had the boards been communicating, and they knew what the left hand and the right hand and the right foot was doing. So that's really what I want to see. And then, in a similar fashion to how builders can come in and get one-stop permitting, you know, with a flow chart that we were working on at the Affordable Housing Committee, a flow chart for a developer who may want to put in some affordable housing, how they can come into town hall, and who do they go see? And we were sort of following Newton's flow chart, because it's very easy to follow, and it's a good, you know, I like to hijack things from other communities that have done things that work, and Newton did a great job with that.
Remember, we also have a problem here because we have design review.
Because what?
We have design review. And the design of these things is supposed to comport with, it looks like a single house, or it looks like a shed or a barn, if it's a separate building or a garage that's been converted. And we may be getting other things in here because nowhere is that explained.
Right. And I have some concerns with a lot of those issues. As one of the units that we passed, where somebody built an actual separate structure, and they said they were gonna take a wall down between 2 bedrooms to make it 1 room. Who follows up with that? And who makes sure that that wall,
The building commissioner.
The building commissioner.
They do,
Right, before
when you
you
get a
get your
building
occupancy.
permit, they come in and they do a new occupancy permit. And they come in, they walk through and they look at everything, and it has to be as you proposed. Now, if you come through later and illegally change it without a building permit, no one checks on that. We don't have police going around knocking on your door and saying, let me see what you did in your house. So,
the wall police?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
coming.
but there is a set procedure
Right.
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah,
And
they
then
wouldn't be
every
able to
time,
get a UNO.
every time we sell a house, the first thing we do is call up the building department and get the latest occupancy permit, look at all the building permits and make sure they're all closed out. The lawyers are all really big into that now. So when they do sell, it comes back.
Should.
It does. And the wall will come down again if they built it.
So you've got a report that is consolidation of the first two meetings and further consolidated by my meeting with Virginia to make sure I was hearing everything the way I thought I was hearing it. Because as you all know who know Virginia, she's very concise about things, very to the point, and I just wanted to make absolutely sure that that I was hearing what I thought I was hearing before I reported it to you.
Did the issue of general residence and accessory apartments come up?
Not really, no, only briefly.
Did a town meeting?
Oh, I know, and she held the article, yeah. So, but only briefly.
Okay, because an answer would be needed before the next town meeting.
Well, that's why we're working on these things. Now, what I would like for some guidance here is, because you were talking about having a large meeting of all of these groups here, the full boards. I think, if I was hearing this correctly, Pam, you would like to,
I wasn't saying the full boards.
oh,
But
okay.
if we could have somebody from the building department, somebody from the Board of Health come and talk to us about how we coordinate this, I would feel much better about.
So that's the group that's currently meeting.
Wouldn't that be best once there's the recommendation
Yeah.
of the group?
Right, yes, as soon as
Yeah.
you're done, then
Right,
we'll talk
then
about
we
that.
need to,
Right, oh yeah,
Come back
not
here.
until they're
Finish their
finished.
job.
okay, I
Absolutely.
misunderstood then. I thought you
no.
wanted to have the boards meeting, all the
No,
boards.
no, I
Okay.
want you to finish
I
all your
agree.
good work first.
Good, bad, or indifferent.
Right.
But there will be some changes, I think, to get support for this bylaw. These others that I was mentioning are going to have some
Answers,
change too. So it's more than just any changes that might come from to our bylaw. Will be the others as well.
Just really want to remind everybody, the two-thirds threshold at town meeting isn't an easy thing, so.
No, it's not.
And we worked real hard to get over it last time. We had to set back and run a long ways to jump. And I think that we got to be careful
Well, I'm
about talking about jumping that wall again.
I'm not sure we'll see changes in our bylaw. It may come in all this explanatory material that has to be
Now,
put
that's-
together
That's
too.
where I was coming from.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's
I
what I'm
don't
saying,
know
too.
at this point.
That's what I've been saying too. There's
Yeah.
work to be done, but it may not.
Yeah, it may not be in
A
the
total change of the
bylaw.
bylaw, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a good discussion. I think Pat knows where we're all coming from, and we're looking forward to hearing from you again.
After next week's meeting.
Okay. General correspondence file, I haven't even looked at it. I'm sorry, I'm not going to hold up the board at the long time, but this is going to take me a while to read and understand. I'm going to ask everybody to come up and read it.
What is it about?
It's Vineyard Wind LLC. I don't know, I'm not going to read it in 5 minutes. It's-
Could someone just send it to us in an email?
We can do that.
Would
We
you
can
it and
scan
just-
an email.
Yeah,
That's
And
it.
then we'll all be ready for next.
that's right.
Yeah, it's way too much for me to deal with tonight.
And it's
Like
much
10
easier to
pages.
get an email than to go up and.
Yeah. So while we're talking on general correspondence, that was my comment, is I would like to see all
Me too.
correspondence emailed to us, because going back to a couple meetings ago, we had an 8-page brief from one of the lawyers that was pertinent to what we were discussing that night.
Yeah.
And I would have liked to have had the time to read it prior to. And I realize that sometimes they come that day or that afternoon, and that's their tough luck if they're
If
that
we need a
late.
week.
But,
I think we ought to make that known.
yeah, I think anything that comes in by the end of the day, Monday,
And Tom has made this recommendation to me twice, and I failed to bring it up, but it's very similar, that all the site plans and buildings also should be posted on the website, so that people, both us and the public, can have time to review the plans.
Oh,
and before the meetings, and not have to go. So basically, I guess the idea would be is if you deliver it to the planning board office, it's going on the website.
Great
that what-
idea.
Yes, a practice we've had previously in other towns is, and then check with IT to make sure we have the bandwidth, and I would venture to say we probably do, to create space on the planning board website, plans under review by the board, and put the PDFs of those plans up there so people can click on the plans on the website. And if they're active viewers at home, they can watch the meeting on TV and have the plans on their laptop.
Click right on the plans.
Yeah, it'd be good if ZBA did the same thing, because there's interplay
Yeah.
there.
Okay, we don't control ZBA.
No, but we can suggest. A suggestion's good.
It is, but I think to lead by our policies, having PDFs not only here at our meeting, but as soon as they're presented, that they're posted on the website at the same time. And that way that people will get used to going on and clicking on it and seeing beforehand, and everyone, even the press will know what we're going to be dealing with, and I think we'll be far more educated and make for better discussion.
Well, and I
Tom.
think the Board of Selectmen have just taken that up also, at Mark Finneran's suggestion, so that the public would be informed, they'd have the agenda, everything.
And I'm going to make make an assumption that people would bring us colored PDFs of the renderings.
Right.
They
We
should
want them
be.
to be a requirement, when if they show up with a rendering, I don't want to be the bad guy and say, no, that's no good. We set this policy a year ago. If they show up in your office, send them back out and have them come back again. Don't accept it unless it's ready to
Just give them a
go.
box of crayons and tell them to go to town.
Well, actually, one person did you see that? There was a colored, a crayon-colored landscaping plan. We rejected that, by the way.
So the other thing that Corey and I were talking about today, we got a letter in very late in the afternoon, and should we try to include this in the general correspondence? Typically, you've got a cutoff date for the meeting that says noon on Friday, whatever that date is. Anything that comes in after that, we're not talking about it at the next meeting, because at some point, you've got to stop bringing new things in over the threshold and deal with the things that you've got. So as we move forward in us working together, we'll suggest some of these policies for your consideration.
I think noon on Friday sounds good to me, but the only problem with that is we have some, like, the A&Rs can come right to the day of the meeting. Isn't that a state law?
The board shall forthwith approve it or endorse an A&R within 21 days. So when we have A&R plans, the board has 21 days to deal with them.
So we could do the noontime on Friday thing. I think I would like that, because I always don't like getting surprised the day of the meeting and not have time to review it.
It's been our
Because
policy for years.
We've all
but
gone
we
up on a
haven't
Monday
to.
afternoon, and you think you've got everything, and then you
Right.
see something on the desk here Tuesday night.
Where'd that come from?
Yeah.
And it's been my experience, and obviously hopefully we're going to be working together for a long time here, I hope to be, in finding out how the board likes to operate. But one of those things is, making sure that you get the information packets when you need them to be able to review them. If you get them too early, it's been my experience that people go, oh, I have plenty of time to review that, and they don't get to them, and they get there too late, then they don't get a chance. So trying to find that sweet spot, typically before a weekend, not to assume that you're just reading planning board goodies on the weekend, but get those things in your hands prior to the Friday before the meeting, so you've got time to look at them over the weekend.
Paul's next, and then
Yeah, I'm just curious. You raised the question of these documents putting on the website. They're pretty large size. And you raised the issue of bandwidth. When do we delete things from the website?
Typically, previously when we had something, initial plan came in, we put it on the website. A revised plan came up, we took it down, put the revised up. Essentially, when the board approves something, then we're done with that. So we would have them on there while they were in the review process and then take them
So
down.
who does that?
I believe we have the capacity in-house to post things to the website. I get a nod from Corey. Thank you, Corey. And by the way, your staff has been fabulous. I know you know that, but Melinda and Corey, and even the new girl, Joyce, everyone has been terrific. They've been very supportive.
Did they buy you lunch?
No.
Did the, after the plan, we used to archive them. You know, once the plan was finalized and approved, it went into an archive so that
They
if
are,
people wanted to
you
pull
can
them
go
up.
back on our website and find everything we've ever approved, drill down and find the plans, and they're all there, but they're in a different fashion.
Right.
Yes.
It would be easier to have a fixed deadline, like Friday before the Tuesday meeting, if there were fixed dates for the meeting. Because now, say you're a builder, and you know you're supposed to make it the Friday, but nobody told you when the next meeting is. If there were fixed dates, like every other Tuesday, or even every Tuesday, God forbid, but whatever, then it would be easier to hold to that rule.
Let's stay with every Tuesday, and at least if they get it in the Friday, there's no meeting, at least it's in there. We don't fail on it, you know, if we don't have a meeting, that's okay.
It's been, and I know that I've looked in my research that the planning board's meetings have been on Tuesdays and not necessarily following a pattern.
Right.
It's not unusual for towns with staff to sort of hold their planning board meetings on the second and fourth of the month or something like that. And if we get in that pattern with some predictability, I think that works for us. I think moving forward, that would be my goal, because in addition to working with you folks, there's lots of other folks.
It's kind of your job to manage the workflow,
So I'll be putting some things together, some suggestions for you on that and moving forward.
While we're talking on websites, I gotta bring it up one more time. I think I brought this up 4 times, maybe 5. If you go to on our website right now, and it tells you when you want a building, you go to design review. And you go to design review and you bring out your architectural plans and you go through it. We changed this bylaw 2 years ago. Our website still calls them the design review committee, and it still tells everybody designing a commercial building to go to design review. No wonder why we don't get them showing up here with PDFs on things we want. Our website tells them to do exactly the opposite. We gotta fix it, and this is like, I've asked many, many times, and now we just gotta get it done.
Tom will get it done. I feel it.
I have a lot of help.
Yeah. But go ahead, look up, throughout our whole webpage on design review, you'll read it and you say, oh my God, this is 2 years out of date. And it's a new website.
Yeah.
Well, oftentimes they port a lot of things over from.
Right, they just bring it all over and redistribute it, but that error shows up throughout the whole process. And it can be quite confusing. We wonder why they don't come with the right drawings. We don't give them the right directions.
And while I'm sharing some love, our IT department has been awesome as well. They have been great. Everything I've asked about, they've been on it, promptly taking care of business. Greg, our Van Worth, our new IT guy, pointed the same night I was. It's been very good, very terrific. And like I said, things have been swell. I'm happy to be here.
Future agenda items.
Wait, can I bring something?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, because we were talking about site plan design review. And I know I muddied the waters because they really do mesh so much. And we used to get slapped silly when we weren't doing design review. I think we need to mesh those in some manner. Call it site plan / design review.
So we do it together.
We do it together.
Right.
I don't see how
The
you
one,
can
not one or the
legitimately
other. We
really
just start on
separate
one
them.
and we're discussing everything. So when they show up, they better have not only the site plan, but the elevation, everything right from the get-go.
Because I realized I was doing that tonight, because it is so difficult to separate the two when you're talking about it.
So from now on, we're gonna co-mingle it and do it all at one time. I'm good
Unless
with that.
anybody else objects to that.
See you, John, you good with that?
I'm fine, yes.
Okay.
Future agenda?
Future agenda items?
Jim,
The Davisville.
Sorry, did I skip over something?
not yet.
Okay. Oh, you're ready for a future agenda item?
I am.
Go ahead. I
The-
started the end of the meeting, Bob.
240 update, we were going to put it on the agenda so that we would be paying attention to it, the two Bobs, to see, last we know, we got a draft contents. I think that it was handed around and taken back, so we don't actually have it. Pat's been looking for it, I've been looking for it, we don't have it. It'd be good if we had it, but better, it would be good if we had an update and we knew that it was coming along. And I think we plan to add it
Yeah,
Okay.
an update on the.
on right.
Get that, Tom?
Got that.
Paul?
Several years ago, the town authorized a review of the bylaws. Last year, we had the two guys come in and show us an outline. We really need to know what's going on with the
Charlotte's
bylaw.
talking about.
I think
That's
this is-
just what we said. Yes, Charlotte,
two Bobs.
second, he's
Bob and
seconding the
I'm
two
speaking to your
Bobs.
wrong ear.
Yeah, it's, we
Okay,
need to have that as a very serious
absolutely.
Especially now with the charter review.
Okay, Bob, I'm sorry, I
Oh,
skipped
go-
over
no,
you.
Pat, he can come down the line.
She didn't
I
have
don't
a hand
have
up. She
anything
didn't
new.
have her hand up.
I'd like to talk about Davisville Road, the East Falmouth Village, see if maybe we can come up with a strategy for that. Where do we go from here? We talked about contacting the East Falmouth Neighborhood Association, so I'd like to get some traction on that. So
I agree.
I'd like to see that on an agenda.
So the agenda would be what kind of items that they would like to review, and then we carry that forward and hand it off to the Cape Cod Commission, actually have them do some work, is that the idea?
Yeah,
So first meet with them,
yeah. I'd like to meet with the association.
and you put that on an agenda in the future, we'll invite the East Falmouth Village Association to come,
Or we can go to them.
or we could go to them, maybe
Yeah.
that's even a better idea.
It
Yeah,
is.
we talked about that.
I think
Yeah.
it's much better.
But I think if it's on the agenda.
Yeah, let's go to
we
them,
can
so,
decide
so
amongst
we're not
ourselves.
asking them, come talk to us, we want to talk, we should go and wait to get on their meeting.
So when we discuss it on our agenda, we should decide who wants to represent this board to go to that meeting and what we want to talk about at that meeting. So we could decide that before we meet with them.
Do we want them to have copies of the reset study? To give them some ideas as to the kind of thing we might be looking for from the commission?
I don't know, I'd like to get their, I'd like to throw it
Okay.
out to them
Now,
first.
is Doug still involved? Doug
As far as I
Brown?
know he is, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, let's, okay, let's,
How many of us can go? 3?
yeah, we can't have 4,
Right.
because then it's a,
we can if we declare it a meeting.
If you
If
post a
Right.
meeting,
yeah, if we
One of our
declare it.
meetings.
Because it'd be easier if the more of us hear it immediately, the
Yeah, I
easier
don't
it'll
mind
be.
I don't mind if four of us go, we'll just
Post it as a
post it.
meeting.
Yeah.
I think anyone who wants to go, I mean, should go.
Yeah, I think they'd be impressed if we all came.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know I went to, I forget what, it was a meeting last year and brought it up
Mhm.
to them.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
And I think the summertime would be a good time to do something like that, because you'll have the summer people here. Summer people and summer not.
That's cute.
It's a little bumper sticker from me.
Okay, any other agenda items?
No, I just, Charlotte and I got a letter from the same couple who, I mean, I read through it and I thought, I hope this is not the general view or lack of what boards do, because it basically, they were concerned about a septic system going close to a lake and clearing that was taking place, and with no clear, I mean, they sent it to conservation.
Well, they had spoken to the health department, they'd spoken to conservation. Their sense was that they hadn't really made their point in an effective way, and that maybe taking down the trees and putting in a septic system right on the pond wasn't a good idea.
Right, but it's not anything within our purview.
No, but it's within our purview to say these are the places you can go.
Well, exactly, that's what I'm saying.
But conservation has a 200-foot, 100-foot setback from every pond.
Right, but it's an
Jim, you know
enforcement
that,
issue.
But residents don't necessarily have,
Well, when they go to the Board of Health and they go to put it in, they're gonna.
no,
No,
it's
no.
not, this was.
The perpetrators hadn't been to the
The
boards.
perpetrators.
The people
Who
across
knows?
the pond
It's-
watching.
It's the somebody who's right there, and they're watching all this, the trees being taken down and a septic being put in close to the pond. Thinking that, so they sent it to us saying, is this the planning board, conservation, board of health? You know, who does that? And what I'm saying is, it's amazing to me, and maybe it shouldn't be, but that people have no clue
The
as to.
septic installers do.
No, but these are just residents who can watch something going on and not have any idea who's responsible or who to call, or, someone to, hold a red flag saying, can you do this? And they weren't notified, but I don't know if they have to be notified if somebody is taking trees down and putting in a septic system. They don't have to be notified.
We have Paige raising her hand. Do we want to recognize the public here?
They sent that to the enterprise too.
Oh, did they
Same
really?
people. I got that. They sent it to like random staff emails that they just grabbed from the website.
Yeah. So it's all over.
Well, I got a little bit of an idea that maybe we should start doing, and I've suggested it before, and as soon as the town finally gets a decent projector system, that when we have a discussion about a site and we put up on the screen, that you can click on the site and bring up the overlay map and see the setback right there on GIS. Falmouth GIS is an amazing tool. It has everything we talk about. If every citizen in town wanted to learn what they can and can't do, it's all packed into that GIS. The trouble is, you've got to know and understand it. So maybe as a point that we start, when a site comes up for a plan review, we should have the GIS up and running. Click on the 100-foot setback, there's the setback. Everybody will see it right away, and we'll educate everyone on television that way.
I have to tell you, in another town, and I won't mention the name,
Learning.
every realtor gave out a packet when somebody purchased a home of, these are the boards and this is what they do. And if you have an issue about septic, this is the board you go to, and if you have this. And it was one of the best things that they could have done, because it really made people responsible. If you have the information, you can't say, oh, I didn't know anything about it.
Well, I provide that to all my clients already, so I don't know if every other
Oh, you
realtor
do?
does that, but absolutely. My daughter's a GIS expert. We show that's part of everything. Every listing we take, we show them, they get the flood maps, the topographical maps, the setbacks, everything the town website has on it.
Sounds like it could be a course for the community night school.
It could be, actually, there's an idea, because every year Brian used to teach a citizens class, and he'd teach them about that, and we could ask to have that incorporated into the next one, how to use the Falmouth GIS.
But it's, I think if
Okay, we're getting way off the
Yeah.
agenda here, folks. I think some great points have been made. It's way over my time to get out the door here. Sorry.
It's okay.
Don't you think it's okay if we cut it short?
Absolutely.
Okay, I didn't mean to cut you short, but I just
That's
wanted.
all right.
I thought, I've been verbose too, so I'm guilty. Next meeting, April 24th? Everybody all set?
Yep, move
Yep.
to adjourn.
Done.